Hey everyone, Captain Amazing here, and today I want to talk about refreshing shards with crystals. So let's jump into it. I want to talk about crystal refreshes for characters and when you should do them. I review a lot of accounts, and when I talk to players what their farms is, what their farming plans are, I'm pretty big on the farming philosophy, what's the best way to do things, what's the most efficient, what has long-term sustainability, all those things. So when I talk to players and they're saying like even in my Discord, players will say like, "Hey, which ones should I be refreshing? Which ones should I be farming first?" Usually the answer is none of these. Like you shouldn't be farming or you shouldn't be refreshing hard nodes to try to accelerate them for no reason. There are cases when you should, and I'll go over it, but I wanted to talk about why you shouldn't be refreshing nodes. And even with, believe it or not, ships. So if you see, I have every single ship except for comeuppance because that's kind of a waste to farm because I don't care about the Radis. And it's usable at 6 stars, but that's not what this video is all about. But if you see, I have every ship at 7 stars. So I didn't accelerate these ships. I just farmed them. It took about 2.5 years. Instead of refreshing nodes, I just would farm, like instead of farming one twice, I would farm 2 ships. Or instead of farming 2 ships at the same time and refreshing those nodes, I would farm 4 ships. And the philosophy is if I farm, let's say I'm farming, let's look at whatever the Kylo Ren's command shuttle and Houndstooth. And I'm like, okay, I want to refresh the Houndstooth and Kylo Ren's command shuttle twice because I want it faster. But instead, I could farm 4 ships for the same cost, but I would save 50 crystals. So it's not even the same cost. I could refresh another one, and then I get another 120 energy, so I could farm a whole other ship or refresh my energy for something else, for like mod energy. And I know, especially in the early game, we are really, really hurting for crystals. Like crystals do not just like rain from the sky. They come from either credit card swiping or like the very little that we get through the game through like Grand Arena, if you're lucky enough to do well in Fleet, or whatever you can scrounge up in GEC. So they are a difficult resource to get. We do get some currency crystal income, so don't waste your crystals on accelerating shards when you could easily just instead go for a more depth of shard farming instead of height as far as trying to get things faster. So there are some circumstances when you should be double farming or even triple farming something. So here's another scenario that I see all the time. So for people who look at the journey guide, right? And you're like, okay, I want to farm this. I want to farm like the profundity. And then you look at these things and it's like, oh, I only have to get these to 4 stars. And so you look at these and you're like, okay, I have to use these ships, right? And then you don't notice that the actual requirement is 7 stars. And a good example of this is with the Executor. So I've seen some people that farm everything except for the TIE Bomber. And the TIE Bomber isn't 7 stars. They have it at 4 stars, but they need all the other bounty hunters, and you kind of get these for free as far as the 2 other Empire ones. So they're just not ready. And then they're like, oh, well, I'm ready for the Executor event. And they go to start, they have 4 stars, so they meet the prerequisites, and then they do this first event, and then they go over here and they're stopped. And they're like, what is this? This is outrageous. This is unfair. The requirement is 4 stars. And it's like, no, it's actually 7 stars to unlock the actual, like, yeah, you can start the event and do one of them and you'll get a few shards, but you're not going to unlock the Executor until you have all the requirements at 7 stars, because then you can complete the final event. So in that case, if I was sitting here and I had everything I needed for Executor except for the TIE Bomber who was sitting at 4 stars, 100% I would probably be triple farming this farm, just to turn it as fast as possible. So I completely understand where in some extreme measures, if you're finishing a very big farm, same thing with the GL, if you have like one hard farm, you just ignored it for some reason, it's at like 4 stars, 5 stars, and you have everything else ready, and you just need to get it to 7 stars, you have the gear, you have the relic material, you have everything, you just need those shards, then yeah, absolutely, I would completely agree. Accelerate that so that you can get the payout for that big farm. But if you are just willy-nilly, hey, I have a bunch of plans and I'm going through my farming. Let's go through my squads here. Let's say I'm going through my farming, right? And if I was like finishing up Profundity and I'm working on, let's say my next farm's JMK, right? And let's say theoretically none of these were like shard farmed or whatever. And I was like, I'm just going to double farm whatever ones I have here. But my next farm after that is, let's say, Leia. And then I'm like, okay, well, my next farm is Leia. So instead of double farming the JMK requirements where I'm not ready, all these aren't at relics, I still have to like gear up some characters, so there's no reason to accelerate all these characters. I can just start farming those Leia requirements at the same time as I farm these JMK requirements, and that's how you kind of like farm everything at the same time smartly, because I do value shards. I do think shards should be farmed. I do believe in collecting pretty much everything. There are some things I just won't farm that are just completely useless, but for the most part, as you can see here, like I farm all my shards. I have almost all characters at 7 stars because I do value the shard farming and having the characters ready. There are some things that I'm still working on, I haven't prioritized yet, or I just don't care about, like Bodhi Rook or something. Yeah, sorry, Dank, but Bodhi Rook is useless. I see very little use of farming him. He has absolutely no use in the game, unless you want to make him a meme or something. So, I would say I'm not gonna prioritize farming him, but like overall, you have to farm your shards, and the reason why, and it's kind of like a tangent here, but you have to layer your farms. And if you are wasting your crystals on needlessly accelerating shards so that you can just go through it faster, you're not going to push through those bottlenecks anyways. Bronzium wiring, signal data, Kyrotech, even core gear, like you only have a certain amount of these things, so you can't just like push everything as fast as you can with shards, because you're gonna run out, or you're gonna accelerate right into that next bottleneck anyways. So instead of rushing to get bottlenecked anyways, that isn't going to accelerate that, just try to build a depth, farm your ships, because I don't know how many people I see, they're like double farming characters which are already accelerated, so they're double farmed, and then they're sitting here with like whack fleets that are single farms and they're not farming them. So instead, if you just farmed 2 to 4 ships at the same time that you farm your characters, over time you will farm every single ship. Because it took me 2.5 years. I just farm. There was times I was farming up to 6 ships at the same time, and I felt at the time, I was like, I think this is probably slowing my progress in some way. And I was like, it's probably slowing me down in some way, that I'm sure there's probably some things I could be farming gear or Kairos or something, but I felt that it was important because it takes a long time to farm all these ships, and I'll need all those ships. And now that it's been 2.5 years and I finally finished all my hard nodes for ships, and I finished all the accelerated farms that I wanted, and now I'm farming unaccelerated farms that I'm moving towards the end game farms, I do think it's important that you just build that depth of farming more shards than trying to waste your crystals and accelerate farms needlessly, because you're not gonna overall, it's not gonna help, right? Like, there's so much in this game, and especially if you're early game, when you don't have any GL, you don't have legendaries, you're like working on a core, like just farm more things, like farm more shards spread your farms out, because farming's like an onion, and there's a lot of characters that you can farm that don't require Kyrotech, or teams that you can build that can give you like true value. If you just get their shards up or get their stars up, then you can kind of like start to layer everything, and it takes a long time for it to work. So when you farm, and I know a lot of people just get impatient, right? And they just don't want to like click on it and see like, oh, I got one shard, or oh, I didn't get any shards, so let me just refresh it so I can get some shards today, so that they feel they accomplished something. But just look at shard farming as a tax. Like, it's just something you do. I really don't pay attention to it. I just, whenever I refresh my energy and I'm using it, I just go through, I do all these, I sim it, and then I move on with my life. If I get shards, I get shards. If I don't get shards, I don't get shards. If I get 5, who cares? If I get 0, who cares? Because the law of averages, it'll all average out over anyways. For unaccelerated farms, it's about 1.6 a day, and for accelerated farms, it's about 3 a day. So over time, like, it doesn't matter. Don't be emotionally invested on if you get shards or not. Like, we play this game every single day. We farm these nodes multiple or every day, like, and we farm multiple nodes at a time. Don't get emotionally invested for things that don't matter. And I've seen a lot of players or streams where they're like, oh man, I didn't get shards, or I didn't, and they get like emotionally involved of what happens with these shards. There's nothing we can do. You just sim it. You go, you click this, you hit sim 5, and then you do, like, you either get shards or you don't, and then you move on with your life. Don't feel like you need to emotionally connect with if you get those shards or not. Like, don't let it ruin your day. You know what I mean? Like, move on. It's just a tax. Collect the shards. Spread out your farms. Don't needlessly waste your crystals. We don't have enough crystals, or at least I even don't have enough crystals where I will be needlessly farming them. Where another place where you could, or where you should, is if you're in end game. So I'll say this, like, I'm in late game, I'm not in end game. I single farm these because I don't have the bandwidth to push through and have the Kyrotech and the relic materials to gear all these things, because I'm using signal data to finish Profundity. I'm using Kyrotech to work on JMK. I don't have the Zetas for JMK. I don't have the Zetas for Cat yet. As I'm building them up, I still have to R8 Marin, and then I'm going to build Leia, and then I have these. And if I accelerated these, what would be the point? I have to finish the Profundity, JMK, Marin, Leia, which I have all shard farmed, and then I'm going to accelerate these, and then, like Gungans or Bo-Katan. If I accelerate those, I don't have the bandwidth to work through it. Where if you are end game and you have everything, you have nothing to spend your shards on, then yeah, absolutely. If you're waiting for the new thing, yeah, absolutely, accelerate the new thing so that you can invest what you have. Because if you have everything and your bottleneck are the shards, then of course accelerate the shards so that you can get access to the new thing. That's pretty much the only case, but that's like extreme end game. And if you're in that position, then why are you listening to me? No, I'm just kidding. You should still watch me. All right, so so all I'm saying is, most people aren't in that position where they should be accelerating these shards, farm more stuff, farm new things. So instead of if you're using double your energy at plus 25 crystals just to farm one character, to farm 2 characters and you save 25 crystals. If you do it with if you're accelerating 2 characters, then it saves 50 and 75, 100, etc. So play smartly, invest your crystals in actual energy refreshes and not in shard refreshes. All right, so if you like this content, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.